Hello, BookTube. Sorry about the end of that video yesterday. The last video yesterday ended with me sneezing and blubbering up, and if it's any consolation to you, it got much worse after I stopped filming abruptly, and just kept sneezing, with liquid just gushing out of my every orifice of my face for like an hour. And after that, even when you stop sneezing and regain control of your senses, you still feel a little out of it for a good long time. And I did. I was only able to do a little writing last night because I was just knocked off my pins and needles by an epic sneezing fit. But I went out today. Today was a freak weather-wise. Yesterday, the last week has been autumn weather. It's been low clouds, spitting rain, cool. Today was in the 90s Fahrenheit, and there was intermittent sunlight. I have to believe that the superheated air and enormous humidity, 95% humidity, I have to believe that is all precursor to a massive change in the weather. I'd be willing to bet that it will rain or even thunder and lightning tonight, and then the whole system will just change again. So I went out a little overdressed today, but I went out anyway. I had a bunch of things to do, and since I left the house, I went to the Brattle bookshop here in Boston. Those of you who might be new to the channel, or 200 of you who are new to the channel, the Brattle is a used bookstore here in Boston. I go there as often as I can. I absolutely love it there. They have a huge turnover rate. They have a great sale lot, an entire lot of land right next to the store that's just full of sale books. And it changes all the time. Everything in the inside and outside of the Brattle changes all the time. So you can always find something new and interesting, and you won't ever be spending lots of money. So I figured if I have errands to do or I have other things to do, I might as well start the day at the Brattle. So I did. But before I went to the Brattle, I went to a drugstore. I went to CVS. Those of you who know CVS here in America, those of you who aren't in America, it's just a quick drugstore chain. It's got aisles and aisles of snack food and dog food and cosmetic wear, and it's got a pharmacy in the back so you can get over-the-counter medication and whatnot. And it also has a small book section. And believe it or not, I when I'm near the Brattle and I go to the CVS, I love the woman who runs it. I don't know if she's the actual person in charge of the CVS, but she runs the whole floor. She makes sure that everybody's complaints are answered. She and I have been smiling and joking and laughing with each other for years. So when I'm nearby, I go in to get a treat for Frida and to see her. And the last time I was there, I did that, and I was at the checkout counter, and we were chatting, and the checkout machine was spitting out my receipt. And when it spits out at CVS, when it spits out your paper receipt, it also spits out a ton of coupons for whatever item, $2 off 4 packages of plastic cups for your kitchen or whatever. I usually ignore them. They're usually not anything that I can use. I don't go to CVS often enough. But my friend pointed out that one of the coupons in that particular batch was $4 off anything. $4 off your next purchase of more than $4. And I thought, she said, keep that. She has a wonderful Jamaican accent. I can't duplicate it. She said, keep that coupon. It's worth $4. And the next time you come in here, just remind me, or I'll remind you. So I went in today. I got a treat for Frida, and I also got a book. I got a book. I had a sale coupon. So sue me. But I had a question. You might be thinking, what book could you possibly get at CVS that you don't get sent to you in the mail? And I had a question about that. I have been watching and very much enjoying Amazon's series called Jack Ryan, starring John Krasinski from The Office, from the American version of The Office, a Massachusetts-born actor, I might add. Amazon they financed a series of adaptations of Tom Clancy's character Jack Ryan, the star of The Hunt for Red October and Air Force One and all that. The star of half a dozen novels, or a dozen novels, and they're ongoing. The Jack Ryan stories are ongoing now. In the novels, he is now president of the United States. Tom Clancy has long since shuffled off the mortal coil and gone to hell. But other writers have stepped up and kept his properties going, and some of those writers have been good. I actually enjoy reading the novels that have Tom Clancy's name, big as life, on them, even though he's dead. I actually enjoy reading them. In fact, the ones by Mark Greaney are better than anything that Clancy wrote. But I had a question. When I was watching those Amazon, I'm really pleased with the Amazon series. The one criticism that I've heard people say about it is that Jack Ryan, who in this series is very young, he's just starting out, he's a CIA analyst. The one criticism I've heard that I agree with is that he moves too readily to simply being an action hero who can never miss with a gun and who's never surprised by anything and who can handle anything. I would much rather have seen that be a slow arc. I would much rather have seen him hapless and out of his depth in a few episodes. And we get barely any of that before he's just an omnicompetent action hero. But other than that, I really enjoyed the series. And I had a question of whether or not Amazon would reissue, whether or not the books would be reissued in paperback with the Amazon series cover art. Whether or not the publisher would take a chance and do that, or whether or not the publisher was one of the publishers who hate Amazon, and so they won't do it. So I've been looking at, at Barnes & Noble and retail bookstores to see if I could see that, whether or not Amazon was doing that. And sure enough, at CVS today, I saw that they are. Here is The Hunt for Red October with the Amazon cover. So I don't know if they're going to do all of them. But this is, in any case, this is one of those oversized. I don't know if I can show you. Yeah, this is an oversized mass market. It's one of those deluxe size mass markets, and they're oversized and they have really good binding. So I actually prefer them. And this is the one that started it all, ladies and gentlemen. This is 1984. This is The Hunt for Red October, which Tom Clancy shopped around everywhere, every major publisher. And they all turned him down. They said, I don't even know what this is. It's so incredibly bogged down with techno-speak that one editor at a major house, who's a friend of mine at the time, told Clancy, he wrote him a detailed letter. People took it seriously. They took the manuscript seriously. They I think the ones that had really good instincts thought that is something. I just have no idea what it is, and I couldn't possibly sell it. And one of those was an old friend of mine at the time. He's no longer with us, but he wrote a letter to Clancy, a considered letter. A first-time author shopping around a book today would be thrilled to get such a rejection letter, telling him, I don't know quite what this is. Your authority when you talk about technical matters is evident, but I had to go through I don't even know how many, 30 or 40 pages before I got to anything resembling a plot. And the story is very good. Those of you who've seen the great movie will know right away the story. Captain Ramius, a Lithuanian, Russian submarine captain, a legendary figure in their submarine corps, has decided to defect to the West, and he's decided to take an absolutely groundbreaking new piece of technology, a submarine called the Red October, with him. He's carefully planned it all. He's hand-chosen the crew that will help to defect with him. And Jack Ryan, a CIA analyst, is one of the only people in the American government who seems to see, who reads the tea leaves correctly, and understands what Ramius is doing. And so he's in a horrible position of being caught between these two enemies who don't trust each other and who don't quite understand what each other is doing. But that old friend of mine was right. You have to wade through an enormous amount to get to that plot. And you have to keep right on wading. There is an enormous amount of technical info dumping in this book. An enormous amount. Almost comical. To the point where you certainly understand why all of those grand old publishing, this 1984 was before the American publishing industry started to be bought up by Bertelsmann and other international conglomerations and told to make money. Instead, editors were princes. And this was right at that time. You can understand why all of those pros would turn this down. Clancy eventually went to the Naval Press, and they printed it. And that gave it a wider audience, and it took off. It absolutely took off. Became an unbelievable bestseller. Was touted by Ronald Reagan. And many, many other people. It became a publishing phenomenon. I would say that it effectively gave birth to the modern military thriller, which now it's de rigueur. It's requisite for you to have massive info dumps. And the fans that Clancy created, expect that. So this is a little bit weird. This cover is the young Jack Ryan from the Amazon series, but it is the novel Hunt for Red October, which has not. And if the Amazon series is successful, they may adapt Hunt for Red October down the line. I don't know, but one way or another, this I wanted to get anyway. I don't know if my local Barnes & Noble will sell these books, because in addition to wondering if the publisher hates Amazon, Barnes & Noble certainly hates Amazon. They might not want to publish something the profits of which are going straight back to Amazon's pockets. I have no idea. One way or another, I got this book with my discount coupon before I even got to the Brattle. So it will be part of our Brattle pyramid here. But then I got a bunch of other stuff, and I wanted to show them to you. Now, this first one is an anthology, and I got it mainly for Douglas Gray, for the editor. This is the Oxford book of late medieval verse and prose. And Douglas Gray does a fantastic job throughout just writing about those things. He writes an incredibly good introduction, and he writes separate introductions for all of the pieces that are in here. And he's all over the notes as well. It's just an amazing volume. I remember reading through it and thinking, boy, I've read so many medieval anthologies, and this one has a surprise around every turn. That's great. That's fantastic. No idea what became of my original copy, but I've wanted to get this back. The Oxford book series, just the Oxford book of whatever, is a winner of a series. There's virtually nothing. There's virtually no entry in it that isn't wonderfully done. This is from the Brattle, and keep in mind what I said the other day about the Brattle. The karma of the Brattle cards is that if you see one thing of a kind, you may see other things of that kind. It's possible. This could jump either of two ways. Either the person who sold this to the Brattle, God knows how long ago, was interested in all things medieval, in which case a bunch of interesting stuff may come down the pike, or the person was interested in the Oxford books, in which case all the Oxford books may come down the pike. One way or another, I wanted this anyway. But I'll be on the lookout at the Brattle for other Oxford books, the Oxford Book of Friendship, the Oxford Book of Maritime Stories, Adventure Stories, you name it. They did a book about it. They must have done close to 30, 40, and all of them are great. But anyway, that was the first thing I got. Then the next thing was this thing. This is also a series, and it's a series that I love. It's Century Travelers. These paperback reprints of great travel writing. There's a whole library of great travel writing. They're very distinctive because they all have a similar cover design and only artwork on the back. And this is a Sabine journey to Rome in the Holy Year by Anthony Rhodes. He decides to follow in Robert Louis Stevenson's footsteps and wander through the Italian peninsula with a mule, with a local guide, visiting little villages. Hence the allusion to Horace in the title. Visiting little villages, seeing all sorts of quaint people and quaint customs, with the end goal being to arrive in Rome. And I read this a long, long time ago. A long, long time. In a completely different edition that's long gone. I was overjoyed to find this. And again, I'm hoping... you see these Century Travelers editions at the Brattle all the time. The whole set, I don't know how big it is, but they're wonderful. I'm a big fan of travel writing, especially since I think my traveling days are over. So it's armchair traveling for me from now on. But this series did a whole bunch of classic volumes that don't exist anywhere else readily. And these turn up at the Brattle a lot. But again, I'm hoping that whoever got rid of this got rid of a lot of them, and that they will turn up, and I will just snap them up, because it's long since time that I reread most of the books in this series. This is going to be a treat. It won't take more than an hour to do, but it's going to be a treat to do. Then the next one, also the Synchronicity of the Brattle. The last time I was at the Brattle, I found J.C. Bald's great biography of John Donne. The biography of John Donne to get if you're only going to read one. It's very steep. It's very stiff biography. It's the fearsome erudition, so... although you can read it knowing nothing at all about John Donne, you're better repaid if you do know something about Donne. Again, that's not hard. You don't need to go to school for that. Just spend an afternoon reading Wikipedia and the follow-up articles, and you'll be fine. But sure enough, because I found that book at the Brattle, I then today found the Penguin Classic of the poetry of John Donne. There he is. There's our poet right there. And this will just go on the shelf with the Bald book. I have a ratty old mass market of the collected verse of John Donne, and now I don't know if it's even this edition. It might be something much worse. Now I have a beautiful Penguin Classic of the complete John Donne to go with the Bald. I guarantee you the person who sold the one sold the other. I could be wrong, but I'm willing to stake a lot on it. And then these next two things are classic Brattle finds. You never know what you're going to find out in the Brattle sale lot. You never do. Like I mentioned, one whole cart is currently classical music CDs. And I found comic books there. I found old playbills. There's a whole cart that's entirely old magazines, old science fiction and fantasy magazines. And today I found I found reprint volumes. These Odyssey reprints of old pulp. This first one is, look at that, Kazar, King of Fang and Claw by Bob Bird. This Kazar was a Tarzan ripoff, obviously, that was done in the 1930s. And then years later, decades later, Stan Lee, it was done for Timely, for an antecedent of Timely Publication Corps. And then decades later, when Timely gave birth to Marvel Comics, Stan Lee remembered Kazar. Of course, he didn't at the time have the rights to Tarzan. So he decided to bring Kazar into the Marvel Universe and have him team up with superheroes. And it's the exact same story. It's the exact same Tarzan story. It's an English lord, the child of an English lord who's abandoned in the jungle and raised by animals. It's extremely Tarzan derivative. There's actually the editor of Odyssey here. In addition to reprinting this episode of Kazar, they also commissioned an original essay called "Noble Yet Savage Yet Pure" by W.H. Desmond, which talks about, you got to hear this. This is talk about classic face saving. In the original, Kazar is a wonderfully written pulp exploring the realms of the theme, a human child raised by wild beasts of nature, that extends itself back in time to the earliest recorded myth. Consider the traditional tale of the mythic founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, for example. This theme, as refined by Rudyard Kipling in his Jungle Books, was crystallized to its pulp fiction purity by Edgar Rice Burroughs. A brief appreciation of the extent of Edgar Rice Burroughs' influential contribution to pulp is detailed in the article "Noble Yet Savage Yet Pure." This article, new to this edition, replaces the otherwise superfluous original advertisements, where we trace the origins, the thematic, literary origins of Kazar. How utterly ridiculous. Bob Byrne simply ripped off Tarzan. There's nothing highfalutin about it. And speaking of Tarzan, I also found this. An Argosy reprint of, let me see if I got this right. This is The Red Star of Tarzan, which originally appeared in April of 1938, and then in September of 1938, Edgar Rice Burroughs came out with a book version, Tarzan and the Forbidden City. And keen-eyed Edgar Rice Burroughs fans noticed huge differences between the two, and suspected that The Red Star of Tarzan was heavily rewritten by Argosy editors, and that Edgar Rice Burroughs published the original version that he wrote, that he submitted to them. So you get effectively two different Tarzan stories, and I have not read The Red Star of Tarzan in I don't know how long. I know Tarzan and the Forbidden City quite well. But I want to read now this, and it's a nice sturdy thing and brand new, despite the fact that it's 40 years old. I want to read The Red Star of Tarzan, and I also want to point out that my love of Tarzan, back decades and decades and decades ago, might have been considerably accelerated had I had a cover like that. I'm not quite sure what emotion that Tarzan is trying to convey, but I would have found a mirroring emotion in a very young Steve, and I've been reading the original Argosy. But one way or another, can you imagine finding these things at the Brattle for $1 a piece? Just wonderful. And then the last thing I found today at the Brattle was a biography of Philip Sidney. And I'm a big fan of Sidney's poetry. I may be the only one left alive who is. And this is Immortal Sidney by Emma Denkinger. And as you can tell from the title, or let's look at some of the chapter headings. Gloriana the Magnificent, A Marriage and a Massacre, A Primrose of Nobility. As you can tell, this is an old style biography of Philip Sidney. This is a highly romanticized version. By the author was she was Bostonian. She was a habitué of the Boston Athenaeum, an old library here in Boston, and she was a regular fixture at Boston bookstores. Steeply intellectual, but she very much wanted to find the romantic story in Philip Sidney's life, and she does throughout this book. And I never in a million years would have thought that I would find this thing. I read it from the Athenaeum ages ago. I'm sure the Athenaeum doesn't have a copy anymore. And I loved it. I mean, it's a guilty pleasure. It's not a scholarly biography, except in the sense that she would never write something wrong. It's just she went in knowing the story that she wanted to tell, and that's back in the 1930s. That was the way to do it. This is from then. It's a wonderful Sidney biography. I will fix it up. I will make it strong, and then I will reread it lovingly. I haven't read it in ages, and no one's ever going to read this sort of thing again. Philip Sidney is dead and gone. No one reads his poetry anymore except to study it in school. And no one knows his life anymore, so publishers very rarely come out with biographies of him. There have been a couple in relatively modern times that were quite good. I reviewed one of them, I think. If I find it, I've written about Sidney many times, so I'll leave links down below to any Sidney-related stuff in case you're a glutton for punishment. But nobody's ever going to write a book like this about him again. No way. This fad is gone. So I was happy to find this book. I will save it. I will reinforce it so that it can stand rereading, and then I will read it lovingly. I will give it loving annotations. And that was it. That was my Brattle trip for today. In the stifling heat and humidity. So we have Immortal Sidney. We have these two pulp reprints. Khazar, King of Fang and Claw, and the red Jewel of Tarzan. With, once again, that cover. This issue was for Burroughs Bibliophiles. Then the complete English poems of John Donne. A Sabine Journey by Anthony Rhodes. Late Medieval Verse and Prose, a great anthology. Can't wait to dig into it. And not quite from the Brattle, but right next door, The Hunt for Red October, in a new paperback because of the Amazon series. So there you go. That was yet more books for the pile. Lots and lots of fun stuff to dig through. Can't wait. Including the Clancy. I will be rereading Hunt for Red October for the first time in I don't know how long. Not since I read it since 1984, but it has been quite some time. So I will read it and see what strange magic is in that book. I'm sure that it's still there. But one way or another, that's my bookish secondhand haul for today. But I'll be back. We've got plenty of other bookish stuff to talk about. Thank you, BookTube.